Hey guys, today we're taking a quick look at the Sakura Wars Series. Perhaps you've seen some of these characters somewhere before, or heard the super catchy theme song. If you ever want to know more about the franchise, you've come to the right place. Unfortunately, we don't really have the time to go into a full series history. Instead, this is more of a brief introduction. And hopefully by the end, you'll know if Sakura Wars is for you. Now keep in mind, this is just my personal experience with the games. It's not a full review or a video essay, it's more of an opinion piece. And I'm sure many of the fans will disagree on some of my descriptions, and that's okay. Okay, let's start with the basics. What type of games are these? If you were to just watch the trailers, you may assume it's a story-based JRPG, or maybe a mecha strategy RPG, or maybe even a Dynasty Warriors clone, or even a dating sim. Well, I'd say Sakura Wars has elements from all those genres, but at its core, it's mostly a visual novel mixed with a classic adventure game. And yes, there's still combat, relationship management, and even some slice-of-life elements. But none of these extras feel tacked on or gimmicky, they're all part of the core gameplay experience, even if they're not always the central focus. And these games often have some voice acting, but it's still designed like a visual novel, so prepare to do a lot of reading. There are multiple games in the Sakura Wars franchise dating all the way back to 1996, and they share a lot of the same core features. The main method of interaction is LIPS, or Live Interactive Picture System. It's a timed multiple choice system where you need to carefully pick what you say, as your dialogue choices will often raise or lower the trust level of your teammates. This is very similar to the system used in the Telltale Adventure games, but Sakura Wars has been doing it since the 90s. In addition to this, later games introduced the analog LIPS system. We can change the intensity of your response, often to hilarious result. Outside of the story sections, you'll also have free time, where you can walk around and explore. This is where some of the slice-of-life elements come in. Much like the Persona series, you'll be able to make a limited number of interactions before the next story event. During these, you can run into your teammates going about their daily life and see what they're up to. You'll often get a deeper insight to the characters, and you'll even be able to raise your trust level with them. Oftentimes, these are just little short conversations, but there are actually some multi-part social events as well. There are also some additional free time activities, such as collecting bromides or taking scenery photos, but these vary from game to game. And of course, because anime, these games often have a bathhouse or hot springs. But for the first time, as far as I can remember, this series actually lets you avoid them if you want. Yeah, you can actually be like, someone's in here, please don't beat me up, and you don't get called a pervert and knocked out. What? How is this even possible? That's not to say you can avoid all awkward interactions, but it's nice to have at least some options. Now for a quick look at combat. This will vary based on the game, with the classics being turn-based strategy and the latest entry switching to real-time combat, but generally all fighting is confined to a specific section of each chapter. And there aren't any practice battles or sub-missions aside from the mission replay feature of Sakura Wars on the PS4. So you're really only able to fight at designated times, and early on that's usually about one fight per chapter, usually near the end, but later chapters may add additional fights. Combat tends to be pretty straightforward, but they tend to throw in some extra elements to keep things interesting. I'll explain this more in the separate games section, but one big change from traditional JRPGs is how stats work. Remember all those trust points we've been building up? Well, these directly influence how our team performs in battle. So there's no EXP, no leveling, equipment, items, etc., just pure friendship power. And I get it, that may sound pretty lame to some of you, why even bother fighting the mobs when you can just rush the boss, right? Well, that may be an option early on, but as you go, they start adding more features to maps that you need to overcome. And the fact that you can't overlevel means they can tailor the fight however they want, and they always manage to keep things interesting. The story follows an episodic structure, with each chapter or episode centered around a specific character or event. Most of the episode is dedicated to solving said problem, and is often solved just in time for the villains to show up. So you engage in combat, take down the boss, and the day is saved. That's the basic chapter structure. It's very much like some old TV shows. And just like those shows, each chapter ends with a preview for the next one. With each episode separated by time jumps, they're able to keep the pacing pretty consistent. There's no real empty space or boring parts of the game. The only time when there's nothing important happening is during free time, and I often find these optional interactions just as interesting as the main story. So there's really never a dull moment when playing a Sakura Wars game. These games may not be very long, but they're definitely not padded. Okay, I think it's time that we talk about the games individually now. There are 6 main Sakura Wars titles. Of those, only 2 have ever been officially localized. However, the original Sakura Wars received a fan translation last year, so now we have 3 playable entries. If you want to play the others, your only option would be to play the Japanese version using a guide. So let's talk about the 3 English entries. And just as before, no story spoilers. I'm not going to show any main story events after the prologue, and to avoid any feature spoilers, I won't be discussing anything that's not available in the first few chapters. Alright, let's start with the original Sakura Wars game on Sega Saturn. This is where it all began. In this game you play as Ichiro Ogami as he commands the Imperial Assault Troops Flower Division, an all-female group who perform in the theater as a cover, but when the time comes they suit up in their kobu and take on the forces of evil. So it's your job to manage the troops both on and off the battlefield. And yes, sometimes this means helping solve petty disputes. This is where a lot of the series staples were established, such as the lip system and free time. There are a lot of optional events here, even some multi-part ones. For example, a character may mention that they lost an item, and if you choose, you can spend some of your free time slots to track it down and return it. There are also some interactive social events with little mini-games. With these, how well you do will determine the outcome. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of mini-games and you only get one try, but it's still really cool to stumble across while exploring. You can also stop by the gift shop to buy a bromide. These are promotional photos of the various characters, and they're not important to the plot, but it's still pretty fun to collect. With limited free time, time management becomes pretty important. And since you can't see the characters on the map, you kinda have to guess where they'll be. Also, there's no way to tell how many interactions you have left until near the end. And once time's up, you'll be forcibly returned to the main story. The gameplay is pretty similar to other classic strategy games, with a few twists. First, there are 3 main action types: movement, attack, and defense. And you can perform up to 2 actions per turn, one of each type. So this could be as simple as moving forward and attacking, or for ranged characters, attacking first then advancing. But if you don't need to move, you can actually use your 2 actions to attack, and follow up by healing or guarding. But again, you can't perform 2 actions from the same category, so you can't attack twice, nor can you guard and heal in the same turn, as those both count as defense. For attacks, you have a standard attack, as well as a special attack that uses your SP gauge. Special moves often have greater range and deal more damage. And if you see multiple red attack panels, that indicates this move has splash damage. For defense, you can guard to reduce incoming damage for a turn, or you can rest to restore your SP manually, or you can even use restore to heal yourself or an ally. But your restore only has 2 charges per fight, so use it wisely. However, some stages will have these steam vents, and standing on them will heal you each turn. You'll also have the cover ability. This allows Ichiro to block damage for a team member. He can block up to 8 times per fight, and you can switch who you protect each turn. And you'll literally warp from wherever you were to negate the damage. You heard that right, neither Ichiro or the other party member will take damage. And on top of that, you get free trust points for every hit you block, so it's a little OP. The bosses are pretty standard for an old SRPG. They don't move around much and they don't have any special tricks, but they do have a lot of health and some fancy high damage moves. But once you get your whole team up there, it's pretty easy to swarm them. But still, the combat is pretty fun. And overall, I think even after 26 years, this game still holds up pretty well. Alright, and next up is Sakura Wars 5 on a PS2. This was the first game to release outside of Japan, and it's pretty fitting as this game actually takes place in America. And after 4 games playing as Ichiro Ogami, we now get to play as his nephew, Shinjiro Taiga. Not impressed? Don't worry, your new party members aren't either. Sure, in the original Sakura Wars, it still took the characters a while to warm up to you, but this time it seems like the new group was actually expecting Ichiro to be the main character. And they aren't too impressed with this kid who looks like he should still be in high school. It gets so bad that when the villains first strike, they literally won't even let you join the mission. It's only after you prove yourself that they finally let you fight alongside them. This gameplay is much like the original, but this time you're in charge of a brand new cast, the Star Division. and saying this game has a different tone would be a bit of an understatement. While the original was a bit cheesy at times, it was clearly aiming to be a drama. This time around, we've walked into a pure comedy. And I actually kind of love that. There's no end to the level of wackiness you'll find in this game. If you're expecting even halfway realistic dialogue, you won't find that here. The main gameplay is largely the same, however those little minigames have been removed and are largely replaced with QuickTime events. Some of these are arguably as complex as the minigames from Sakura 1, but at the end of the day, they're just a bit less interesting. This game also adds more social events, so you'll definitely need multiple playthroughs to see them all. And the game now has a clock that you can reference to see how much free time you have left for events. And if the clock goes away, you can easily tell that you're in a section without a time limit. Some new social event interactions are added as well. Each chapter you're tasked with taking a scenery photo for an upcoming brochure. You're given a clue to the photo's theme, but it's up to you to figure out what will fit best. Additionally, in social events, characters may also request a photo, and you'll be able to gain additional trust points by taking a good picture. My only real complaint with the game is that even a few chapters in, they don't really handle drama well. Anytime they try to have a serious moment for a character, it just feels a little off. It's kinda hard to explain, like they do a really good job at being silly, but when it comes time to discuss a serious topic, it kinda feels like they never set the tone properly. So it ends up feeling more like they're taking a break from the comedy, rather than actually setting up a dramatic moment. I don't think this is really a huge deal, but it's just still a little odd. And as silly as the villains were in Sakura Wars 1, at least you had a general idea of what they were working towards. In this game, even a few chapters in, the villains only show up to fight, then they immediately leave without much information other than, "We want to destroy the city," or whatever. This game is more focused on the main cast and their individual stories, rather than the traditional good versus evil plot. Alright, now on to combat. Quite a bit has changed since the first game. Gameplay is still turn-based, but now we have free movement. Instead of being locked to 2 actions per turn, we now have 7, and nothing is locked out. If you want, you can move, attack, heal, and guard all in the same turn. But there are a few trade-offs. First, the more you move, the more action points you'll use up. But this is based on distance from your starting point, not steps taken. So looping around obstacles may help recover some action points. Second, attacking only costs a single action, so you can use this to hit multiple targets in one turn. However, you can chain your attacks together on a single target up to 5 times to increase the total damage. The damage is based on the number of strikes in a combo, so there's really no reason to use a single strike unless you really need to finish off a weak foe. Enemies can chain attack too for whatever reason. I think they just like wasting your time. But if you ever find yourself with 1 action point left, you could always try a joint attack. If you have an ally within range, you can line up some enemies between the two of you and take them out together for the cost of some SP. Healing also costs 1 action point and it doesn't have limited uses, but it will cost some SP. And you won't regen SP from taking damage anymore, you now have to pay 4 action points, and you can pay 2 points to guard. The protect system is back and it's just as OP, but this time it's limited to just 3 uses. You'll also have a new support command where once per fight you can instantly warp a party member to you. This can be helpful on larger or multi-section maps, and it gets you a free trust point. Also, if your trust level is high enough, you and a party member can both spend your full SP gauge to unleash a wide-range combo attack. And last, there's a stratagem system. With this, you can change the attributes of your entire team. You can change buffs, as well as the cost of guarding and SP regen. Early on in fights, I often prefer the defensive style, as it allows me to guard for just 1 action point. This style will lock you out of super moves, but 5-hit chain attacks already do a ton of damage and they don't cost SP. And now let's talk bosses. In this game, they're so big they don't even fit on a normal map, so we have to activate flight mode and take to the skies for some aerial combat. The movement's still 2-dimensional, so you can't fly closer or further away from the boss, but you can still rotate around them or move up and down. When it comes to the actual fighting, they'll often have multiple target points that you can focus. For example, taking out a boss's limbs or weapons can help you decrease their damage output. The bosses will often have a gimmick of some kind that you have to deal with before you can take them out. It's nothing too complex, but it does help mix things up. and once you see the core, you know you're about done. Overall, this is my favorite game in the series. The new combat options offer a lot more variety, and the super fun characters and stories just kept me wanting more. And while the original Sakura Wars did a great job of capturing the feel of a mid-90s anime drama, I feel this one does a great job of nailing the mid-2000s shonen style. And finally, Sakura Wars on the PS4. Released almost 15 years after Sakura Wars 5, this is the 6th main entry and a soft reboot for the series. In this game, we play as Seijiro Kamiyama, who's in charge of the brand new Flower Division. And he's really got his work cut out for him. It turns out this Flower Division can't really act, so their theater is in serious financial trouble. And on top of that, their combat performance isn't good either. They can barely afford to repair their own mechs, and it's gotten so bad they actually had to have warriors from a separate country sent over to protect Tokyo for them. So it's up to you to get the theater back up and running while at the same time restoring the combat division to its former glory. Easy, right? This new game takes the core gameplay from the previous titles and expands upon it. Starting with how free time works. Previously you just walk around and stumble across optional dialogue, but in this game the interaction limit is removed, and you're given more free time opportunities for each chapter. And you have this new smartphone feature that will show each character's location, and it even has indicators for active social events and the main quest that will progress the story. The events work much like older games, but now there's some mini side quests as well. They're pretty short and don't have a ton of story, but they still offer some variety. There are some timed social events as well. Sakura 5 did this too, but they were mainly just multiple choice interactions. This time around they're mainly fetch quests, but it's still a bit of an improvement. Also, while you can still buy bromides in stores like in earlier games, they have an additional set of collectible ones that you just find laying around. Most of the classic minigames are still absent, but Koi Koi has been expanded into its own game mode. You can play it at any time, and throughout the main game you'll even unlock more opponents to play against, so it has a lot more replay value. Also, as you can probably tell, the art style has changed quite a bit in this new entry. They brought on the Bleach creator for the character designs, and the entire game is playable in 3D. All cutscenes are fully animated and feature dynamic camera angles for a more cinematic look. And the world itself is really well designed, with some nice lighting and reflections, and you can freely speak with NPCs in this game, and they rotate them out depending on the day. So seeing the new daily interactions can really help make the world feel bigger. And occasionally, NPCs will even offer their own mini side quests. All these changes help make the game feel a bit more modern. However, there are still some odd design choices. First, there's no English dub. Personally, I don't see this as a huge issue, as the Japanese cast is fantastic, and I often play games with Japanese audio anyway, but there's still a lot of people who prefer English, and for the grand return of a franchise, an English dub could have attracted a larger audience. Sure, it would have been more expensive, but even the PS2 game included English voices. Second, during all the major story and social events, the text is set to auto-advance. This does help the dialogue flow more naturally, but there's no way to turn it off. The only way to stop the text would be to pause the game or open the text log, and since the game only has Japanese audio, slow readers may find this a little frustrating. And third, also on audio, while I did not expect the game to be fully voiced, even some parts of the main story and social events aren't voiced. Once you unlock the combat simulator, you'll finally be able to take on optional fights during free time. However, you'll be limited to replaying old story missions with different characters. This system does offer some rewards, but many rewards require you to play the same mission with various characters. So while it's a nice addition and a quick way to get a few more trust points, the missions will get pretty repetitive. QuickTime events have also been removed, however I don't think they found an adequate replacement yet. Sakura 1 had those minigames, and while Koi Koi Wars is pretty cool, it's really just a separate game mode. I think an additional interactive element could have helped add some variety to gameplay, and unfortunately I don't think the new fetch quests fit that goal. Tone-wise, this game is much closer to the original Sakura Wars, but with a more modern anime writing style. And the game manages to handle humor well, and can still build dramatic moments. And the romance elements are definitely more front-loaded this time around. From Chapter 2 and beyond, you'll be able to enter trust events. These aren't quite dates, but more simple one-on-one interactions to help develop your relationship with a character, and they serve as a build-up to the dating elements later in the game. Okay, now on to combat. It's one of the biggest changes yet, as we're switching over to an action RPG style. You'll fight in a two-person party for most of the game, and your second character is pre-selected based on the story, but you can switch between them at any time. Unfortunately, this means you can't bring your whole party with you anymore, although they'll occasionally show up as AI support characters. You have two main attacks, a light attack and a heavy strike, and you'll have a few combos you can do with these. And you can jump and attack for an aerial strike. You'll also have a quick dodge, and timing it perfectly will slow down time. You can also boost to cover more ground quickly, as well as slide across some surfaces. You can also attack out of your boost for a kind of dash attack. And once your meter is full, you can unleash your ultimate attack. Battle actions will add to your morale bar on the left, and once it raises to a new level, you'll gain some temporary buffs. But taking too many hits can lower your morale level and you'll lose those buffs. You can also find these little crystals on the battlefield that can recover your health and special meter. Group attacks are back and they're as flashy as ever. However, this time they'll just give you a temporary attack buff and invincibility. So while it may seem like combat provides a decent number of options, just mashing out attacks can get you through most fights. And once your meter fills, just launch your super and get back to mashing. There are a lot of nice extra combat features, but most of them are either passive or not really needed for smaller enemies. You don't ever really need to plan for anything, and the only time you'll even need to dodge is for larger enemies or bosses. That's not to say it's not fun, I actually do like it, and I actually don't mind the more simplistic combat, even if it is a little repetitive. But it does still feel like the older games had a bit more complexity, and that really helped make the combat feel a bit more interesting. Overall, I'm really glad Sega decided to bring this franchise back after all this time. It's clear they put a lot of effort into bringing Sakura Wars to the modern era, even if it does have a few issues. And I'm really looking forward to what they do next. Okay, now for the summary. Is Sakura Wars for you, and are the games still worth playing today? I mean, back in the 90s, games like this were pretty much unheard of, but now pretty much everything's a hybrid. Both Persona and Fire Emblem have social events and dating, and far more detailed combat systems, more realistic characters, and even a more detailed plot. Where does that leave Sakura Wars? Is the series obsolete? I'd say no. I don't think Sakura Wars was ever trying to compete with those titles. Even after the release of the original Persona games and many other titles, Sakura Wars remained largely the same. It had no interest in hyper-realistic characters or complex overarching plots. It's more about telling simple character-driven stories and allowing players to explore the smaller worlds they create. Maybe it's the extreme simplicity, but these titles just have a different feel than other games. I've seen many JRPGs or VNs claim, you get to play an anime, but this is the first time I actually felt like I was playing an interactive version of the animes I used to watch a long time ago. So I'd say if you like simple anime plots and memorable characters, give the series a try. But there's also the cool 1920s aesthetic, the great music, the mecha combat, and if you're into that, waifus and fan service. The fan service is pretty mild, it's about the same as your typical anime, and again, you can often choose to not interact with it if you prefer. Personally, as a guy who doesn't really care about waifus or dating sims, when I first tried a Sakura Wars game a few months back, I really thought I'd find the series boring. But the world and character interactions really won me over. So, where should you start? Well, really any of these games would be a good starting point. They're all good in their own way, and they all have the signature charm and the anime feel the series is known for. None of them are direct sequels, so you could really jump in with any of them. If you have a way to play modded Sega Saturn games and want to see where the series began, I'd say go with the original Sakura Wars. It's a lot of fun and has a classic 90s feel. If you want something a bit more modern and don't mind a bit of silliness, Sakura 5 is also a great starting point, and it adds some nice additions to lips and combat systems. And finally, if you want arguably the best presentation in the series, along with tons of modern features, I'd say go with Sakura Wars on the PS4. Anyways, that's all for now. There's a lot more to these games, so I really want to keep the video around 25 minutes. But hopefully this was enough to help you decide if you're interested and where to start. If you have any questions or want to share your own opinions on the series, leave a comment. I'm also on Twitter, so feel free to DM me or at me with your thoughts. Alright, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!